comes. Through Srimad Bhagavad Gita in the last few weeks, we have been discussing about the karma yoga and the influence of karma in our life. In fact, we were discussing about the real burden in life that happens through the work. And we need to be knowing that the real burden in life is not the work itself. The real burden is the ego. The ego that accomplishes the work is creating the burden. And we also discussed on seeing the inaction in action and act without attachment. So that is what a wise person do. So how to get rid of the burnout is all about seeing the inaction in action and understand the play of ego, especially acting without the attachment. So now the question will come when we think from a practical plane. If I am not working for my ego, then why should I work at all? Correct? If I don't need to bother about ego, without having that selfishness, then what is the point in working at all? Even Arjuna also misinterpreted this. That's where Bhagavan Krishna reaffirms that you see the higher purpose behind any action. The term Yajna, if you see in the last session we have seen in the verse, the term Yajna, and today we will discuss more about that term. And most of us think that Yajna is something like a ritual, a fire ritual, or something that is performed around a fire. Yagam, Yajnam. So this is, used interchangeably, and most of us think that this has something to do with a fire-based ritual. Here Bhagavan Krishna says Yajna is a way of living. Yajna as a way of living. It is the transformation of every action from what I will get to what can I contribute. Instead of what will I get, what others can get. What can I contribute? From merely taking to an attitude of giving. So what am I going to get to what I am able to contribute? From taking to giving. This is the attitude behind a yajna. So in a very common man's language, surrendering the ego to an offering. This is what a yajna is all about. It has nothing to do, in the olden days, all the fire-based rituals we labeled as yajna, but Bhagavan Krishna says yajna is a way of living. Yajna is an avenue to transform every action from what can I get. If you see in the real yagam or yajna, what is that dominant thinking behind doing the yajna. Idam namam. It is not mine. I am just giving. I am surrendering my ego and I am offering it. So that is where we all have to understand from a modern perspective. When we work in this world, we sometimes value things in life, sometimes we don't value. So we have to really understand that everything that comes in our lives is coming from somebody else's sacrifice. The road that we use to, the food that we eat, anything, maybe you can relate it in a better way. Whatever we use, whether the public systems that we use, the milk that we consume, the food that we eat, or take the knowledge that we possess, right? Google, or if you see the modern AI world, or the all the large language models to everything around us, it is basically the contribution of the people towards increasing our own knowledge. So that's where I'm saying the knowledge that we possess, moving away from the traditional way of learning to the fast paced AI world, these all are the contributions of people around us. Contributions in the sense, the sacrifice, let me use the word here, sacrifice. So what I'm trying to say is we are the beneficiaries of countless visible and invisible contributions made by the people around us. When I say people, not only confining to the people, the system around us, including the nature around us, including the animals, birds, who are contributing to that system. Beneficiaries are, I mean, though we are the beneficiaries, there are enormous visible and invisible, I would say, the contribution or the sacrifices of different people or the things around us. So we started with the term the burden. The work is not giving the burden. In fact, the ego, which is claiming the work, is creating this invisible burden, invisible weight. When I say the invisible weight, invisible weight in the form of ego, invisible weight in the form of expectations, invisible weight in the form of comparisons, or psychological ownership. So that's where Bhagavan Krishna reaffirms that Arjuna, Nishkama Karmam is not something that is introducing a laziness here, right? When we say egolessness, it doesn't mean that the life is going to be hopeless or life is going to have the attribute of laziness. It has nothing to do with. It is only about stop claiming the ownership. Because when we have the attribute of stopping the claims, the burden will automatically come down. So that's where Bhagavan says one of the easiest way to lower the burden is through Yajna Manobhava, through the attribute or through the ability to execute things in a Yajna form. What is Yajnam? Yajnam is basically the selfless contribution for the betterment of a larger set of things, or the welfare of a larger set of audience is called as Yajna. So Yajna is needed because, as I mentioned, numerous visible and invisible contributions are made by different things around us, including people, including animals, including plants, including the nature around us. So we all have to have the Yajna Bhavam. Why? Because we need to sustain this harmony. This Yajna Bhavam not only sustains the harmony, it also cultivates the gratitude as well as remind us in every moment of life that this life is based on mutual support. So life itself will become Yajna when we serve the society, when we share things, when we share knowledge, when we protect the nature, when we perform duties without selfishness. So these all are very simple. So what is Yajna? Yajna is something we can say as an instrument to remove the sense of separation, because the thinking, the holistic thinking, when we understand the system, obviously the Yajna mindset will come in all of us. That is where the sense of separation will go away. See, our ego says that I am separate from the world, I need to consume, I need to possess, I need to achieve things in life, I need to enjoy, I don't care about what others need. The ego will always say that. So ego will say, let me take, let me consume, let me enjoy, let me achieve, let me not bother about others. Whereas Bhagavan says, when we have the mindset of Yajna, we will start thinking that I am a part of this interconnected whole. What I receive is a gift because I see the visible and invisible contributions in whatever I possess, or whatever I get, whatever I consume. So let me do back in the form of an offering. Because I get a gift, I get the gift in the form of visible, invisible contributions. So what I can do is basically I can give back is I offer it back. So this is the shift we all have to have in life. So when we have this mindset, the life will become very lighter. So the burden that is created by the possessiveness, ego, anxiety about the results, that will create more stress, that will try to create entitlement, that will try to create competition, and that separation mindset created by the ego will create loneliness. So there comes the Yajna as a savior. Yajna restores the understanding that life is based on the contribution, because everybody contributes to this cycle. And life is not just based only on the consumption. So every selfish action, what happens when we do the selfish actions with the ego, the small I, so called as the ego, the small I as the center, right? We will be creating compartments in life. That compartments will give more and more stress. That compartments will give or create baggages in life. So when we have the Yajna mindset, every act as an offering, what happens? The small I called as the ego will get weaker and weaker. Otherwise, from a Vedantic way, what is there behind the mind? Srotrasya srotram manaso manoyat vajoha vajam sau pranasya prana chakshusha chakshur adi muchyadira pretyasmat logat amrudat bhavanti. So, what is there behind the mind? What is happening in the deep sleep? Jagrat swapna sushiptishu spudadara ya samvid ujram bhade. Beyond all the three states, what is the continuous connection that I have? I am that consciousness. In that awareness, everything is happening. So when the ego goes away, the mind will be able to realize the real I, the so-called as the capital I. Will see the influence of capital I everywhere. Will understand that everything that I get is a gift. Everything that I receive is an expression of the same consciousness, because the same consciousness is working everywhere. I get the expressions from different things, which is a part of the same consciousness. That's where, when in the last session we discussed Brahmarpanam Brahmavir Brahmagno Brahmanahudam Brahmaivadena Gandhavyam Brahma Karma Samadhi. So we see that Brahman everywhere. And it is also something like we need to perform yajna not just because of an external God needs all those offerings. That God is within us. Ishvara sarva bhudanam hrudyeshe arjuna tishtadi Bhagavan sarva bhudanam adhyaksho avasthido guham. So that consciousness is within us. There is no external God who is looking for our offering. But what is really needed? Our ego needs purification. That is where Bhagavan says you do things as yajna. Because the ego is the culprit. The ego needs purification. That's where Bhagavan says yajna as an avenue to roast the ego. Roast. So that actions won't bind us. Yajna is what? Yajna is basically yuj, yogam yuj. Similarly, yajnam will also join the body, mind, spirit, the self. Yajnam, there are different yajnam, we can see that. Japa yajnam, dhyana yajnam, dravya yajnam, jnana yajnam, different yajnams are coming. We'll look into that later. And you start from the dravya yajna, whatever you can offer, the wealth, the materials. That is at the gross level. Any offering that we can give to others in the form of materials, in the form of objects. Then we can go into the subtler planes, so that the dhyana, meditation. For what? For making the mind still. And further subtler, go to the jnana yajna. You gain and realize the knowledge of the self. In the end of chapter 5, Karma Sanyasa Yogam, Bhagavan says at the end, the last verse, I remember clearly, Bhoktaram yajna tapasam sarva loka maheshwaram suhridam sarva bhudanam jnatva mam shanti mrichadi. Bhoktaram yajna tapasam sarva loka maheshwaram suhridam sarva bhudanam jnatva mam shanti mrichadi. Knowing the true I, knowing me in the receiver, in the dispenser of the fruits of sacrifices and spiritual practices. Sarva Loka Maheshwara, knowing that the Lord of all worlds, who is also Suhridam Sarva Bhudana, who is also the friend of all beings. In Srimad Bhagavatam, in another way, it says, Sarva Bhudanam Adhyaksho Avasthido Guha. Here, Lord is the Suhrid of all Sarva Bhudam, Suhridam Sarva Bhudanam. So, what happens? The one who has this understanding, that person, he or she will gain peace and liberation. Jnatva mam shanti mrichadi. What is liberation? What is the real freedom in life? Knowing the true self. And knowing the true self as what? Suhridam sarvabhudanam jnatva shanti mrichadi sarva loka maheshwaram. The infinite reality. You know the true self as that infinite reality. In the Ishavasya Upanishad, Tajjedi Tanneijadi Taddure Tadandige Tad Andarasya Sarvasya Tadu sarvasyasya bahyadaha. In the Ishavasya Upanishad. What is the understanding? Tad dure, tad andige, tad andarasya, sarvasya, tad sarvasyasya bahyadaha. That moves, that doesn't move, that is near, that is far, and that is also within me as the consciousness. So this is the understanding. So Yajna is the way, is the greatest avenue for our own upliftment. Upliftment towards what? Knowing the true self. So in the previous session we saw one of the Yajnam as the Deva Yajnam, if I remember clearly. Correct. Devam eva abare yajnam yogina paryuvasade brahma atno abare yajnam yajnena eva upajuhvati. Deva yajna, offering things to the, or invoke the deities. Deva yajna, perform rituals, invoke the deities. Also we saw that the offering of organs of hearing and other senses into the fire of self-mastery. Others do that. One set do the Deva Yajnam, others offer the organs of hearing and senses into the fire of self-mastery. Offering sound, offering sense objects into the fire of senses. So, why this is needed? Because we need discipline. Discipline for gaining the self-composure. So, why Yajna is needed? Yajna is very much needed because Yajna is the only antidote to all modern problems, including the distractions, digital overloading, to control the senses, media distractions, social media distractions. So Bhagavan re-emphasizes the Yajna here. Yajna is what? Yajna is basically a transformation mechanism to serve as a, what is the right word? Ceaseless connect. Ceaseless connect with the things around us. The whole life itself to serve as a ceaseless connect of the infinite reality. Whatever we do, in whatever form. And what we need a mental attitude. Mental attitude for what? Mental attitude to gain an intellectual understanding about the vision of interconnectedness. So three things. A transformation in our life to connect everything. And second is basically an attitude to gain an intellectual understanding about the vision of interconnectedness. When I say the interconnectedness, the visible, invisible contributions done to all of us by different things in life, in the world. And third is basically a constant awareness of the true self. Three things. So with that, we will get into the first verse for today. Verse number 27, 4th chapter, Jnana Karma Sanyasa Yogam. Sarvani indriya karmani prana karmani chapare atma samyama yogatnau juhvadi jnana deepite. Sarvani indriya karmani prana karmani cha apare atma samyama yogatnau juhvadi jnana deepite. So what is this? Sarvani meaning all indriya karmani. What is that? Indriya karmani meaning what? The karmam that is done through the different indriyas. Prana karmani meaning the actions done through, or maybe the activities done through the organs of actions. Avare, meaning others, Atma Samyama Yogagno, in the fire of self mastery. Juhodi Jnana Dipide, meaning the lighted by the knowledge. So, other set of people will do the yajnam in this form. What is this form? Offers all the activities of the senses and the organs of actions unto the fire of self-mastery lighted by the knowledge. So, Jnanendriyam, we all know this, Jnanendriyam, Karmendriyam. What are the Jnanendriyam? Ears, eyes, nose, tongue, skin. Ears, eyes, nose, tongue, skin. Yes. And the Karmendriyam, mouth, hands, legs, organs of excretion and reproduction. So 10 indriyas, Jnanendriya, Karmendriya, 5 plus 5. Right. So now let us take the example. We see things. Forms are coming to the eyes. Where the processing happens, whether the eyes are giving any information about the forms, it's obviously no, because the mind is doing it. Rupam drishyam lojanam drik tad drishyam draktu manasam drishyadi vrittaya sakshi drigevanadu drishyate. In the drishya vivekam, we can see that. Rupam, drishyam, lojanam, drik. The eyes are gathering, what we call in a technical term, we can see the frames are captured by the eyes, but the mind is forming perception. And how the perception is formed in the mind? It is due to the consciousness. Ultimately, due to the consciousness, the mind is able to see. Even the changes in the mind, emotions in the mind. So when we have this understanding, what is that? The altar is the mind, the fire is the self-mastery, the fuel is the sense activities, and the result is what? The result is really the inner control or freedom. So I will explain this. See, here we have Indriya Karmani and Prana Karmani. These are the two things. Sarvani, Indriya Karmani, Prana Karmani. What are those? Indriya Karmani meaning the activities of senses. What are those? Eyes are seeing, ears are hearing, tongue is tasting, nose is smelling, skin is feeling that touch sensation. And if you see the Prana Karmani, the functions of life energy, breathing, movement, speech, the thing which we don't know is digestion, and the physical activities. So the activity of senses, mainly they are outward oriented, or the senses are pulled outward, and whereas the functions of life energy, that includes breathing, movement, speech, digestion, the activities that we do mainly happen through the body and mind. So what is told here? Both the Indriya Karmani, Prana Karmani, both are offered to the fire of self-control. And that is referred here as the Atma Samyama Yoga Aknau Juhadi Jnana Dipide. Atma is self, Samyama is mastery, Yoga is so called as the integration, is Atno, yoga atno, Agni meaning the fire. So these two, the prana karmani and the indriya karmani, I'll try to simplify it. What happens if a river is not having any banks, and when the rain happens, the river will flood the villages? Whereas if the river is having banks, let's take the example of a power hydro power dam, where the dam is having walls. What happens in that case? It is controlled. The flow is controlled, and with that water, electricity is created. So you understand that the same water is flowing in a river which is not having any banks, versus a river which is having banks in the form of a dam. Same water is there, and the water is also flowing in the same direction. What is different here? The water is controlled. Similarly, a mind which is not controlled will give suffering in us, whereas a mind which is disciplined will create better control. So here, offering of the senses into the fire, Atma Samyama Yoga Atnau Juhvadi Jnana. Instead of becoming a slave of our impulses, it is better to continuously direct our energies. So such set of people will dedicate the Indriya Karmani and Prana Karma and Indriya Karmam towards the fire of self-mastery, so called as the Atma Samyama Yoga. No. And they do have the knowledge which is lighted by the knowledge. So a disciple asks his guru, master, how do I know whether I control my mind or my mind is controlling me? The funny guru replies, you skip one desire today. So now the Shishya asks, the disciple asks, only one. So our guru smiles and responds to the Shishya that if you can skip one, you are the master of the desire. And if you cannot do that, who will become the master? The desire will become the master. So one, you may ask, only one. Let's take the example. If somebody feels that without drinking tea, I will not have a good day. Whether the chaya is a problem, whether the tea is a problem there. Tea is not asking, please drink me, please drink me. Who is under the control of tea? Our mind is. So here, it is not a compromise, because Jnana Deepite, lighted by knowledge, not any blind control happening here. So maybe you may ask, why should I control my senses? Why we should control the senses? Because the true knowledge or the right understanding, only through right understanding or through right knowledge only we can evolve in life. That clarity should happen in all of us. What is the clarity that we need here? Because very important, Jnana Deepite, it has a lot of implied meanings. The clarity that we need to have in life is basically the permanent happiness will never come out of these indriyas, whether it's karmendriya or jnanendriya. The permanent happiness cannot come from the objects. And a jnani will also not jump into the every impulse. I don't need to address every impulse in life. And jnani, through the jnanam, understands that freedom is always better than indulgence. So here we may think that Bhagavan Krishna is suggesting some sort of a discipline. It is not just a discipline, it is basically a preparation for gaining the self knowledge. And why this is mentioned here? Because a disturbed mind cannot realize the self. See, if you see a still lake, or if you have a still lake, how will be the reflection of the moon in that lake happens? It will be clear, it will be seen perfectly. Whereas if the water is distorted, what will happen? If you throw a stone into the pool, will we be able to see the moon clearly? We will see the distorted moon. You might have seen. Similarly, a disturbed mind cannot realize the self, which is beyond and behind the mind. Just as a disturbance in a lake cannot reflect the moon clearly, similarly an agitated mind cannot recognize the self, cannot recognize the truth, cannot recognize the true nature of all of us, so called as that consciousness, existence, consciousness, bliss principle. So this verse is basically equipping us to have this mastery of senses so that the mind will never get agitated. The mental calmness is really needed, and only in a calm mind the truth gets reflected. So the highest sacrifice is yajnam, is through the offering of impulsive living into the fire of conscious living. So Bhagavan says that this is where jnanis gain that self-mastery and they realize the self. So it is not saying don't use the technology or don't enjoy the life or don't perform the duties or run away from life or don't watch movies or nothing. It has nothing to do. You remain free. Let the senses and mind function, but you be aware of who truly are you. You live in the awakened awareness. Uttishtata jagrata prapyavaran nibodhada. So you live in this reality. So towards that, with the right knowledge, you offer indriya karmam, prana karmam, all those things into the atma samyama yogam. Wake up and realize the true nature. Awake from these illusions. Verse number 28. Drevya yajna tapo yajna yoga yajna stadapare swadhyaya jnana yajnascha yadaya samsidavrata drevya yajna tapo yajna yoga yajna tadapare swadhyaya jnana yajnascha yadaya samsidavrata drevya yajnam tapo yajnam yoga yajnam tadha apare swadhyaya jnana yajna yadaya samsidavrata. Okay, a very profound verse. All yajnas, What are those? Dravya yajnam, wealth, sharing objects, sharing materials. Tapo yajnam meaning the prayerful discipline, tapasa. Yoga yajnam, through the way of yoga. Tada, so too apare, people, others will do what? Swadhyaya jnana yajna cha. So they do swadhyayam, reciting, study, learning scriptures, jnana yajnam, study of the self, the true self, realization, sravana manana dhyanam, yataya, samshita brada. So those of firm, right? These are the firm people, right? So they do the vows and make the efforts to do this kind of sacrifices. What are those sacrifices? Sacrifices through dravya yajnam, material offerings, through tapasa, through austerity, through practice of yoga yajnam, through study of scriptures, and also the jnana yajnam, the pursuit of knowledge. So dravyam, wealth, money, offering. So that is where in the olden times, olden days, through the yaga yajnam, people offer land, kings give land, gold, clothes, grains, different things, without any expectation. Idam namama, when they offer, it is not mine. Even why it was done? You may ask. When we say idam namama and without any expectation, it is only for the andakarana shuddhi. It is only for the mental purification. In the form of wealth, in the form of dravyam, for gaining the mental purity, the andakarana shuddhi, to reduce the ego. And tabo yajnam meaning what? Tapas at which levels? Shariram, vak and manas. So, shariram, vak, manas, that is why it's a tapas, prayerful discipline. It is basically to get the samyamam, to get this control. Tapas. And in another form, we usually do the tapas through the Ekadashi these days, right? This is also quite common. People do tapas through Ekadashi or doing some vrata on particular days. For what? It is not to show that I don't eat rice on Ekadashi or something like that. Ekadashi. Dasha. All the indriyas which we mentioned. Channelized or directed to one direction. Ega disha. Towards that self. Knowing that self. So, tapas is what? Shariram, vak, mano, shuddhi, samyamam, prayerful discipline. And the yoga yajnam. So now, we are now celebrating the Yoga Day, International Yoga Day. What is yogam? Yogam is what? Chitta vritti nirodham. So what happens when we do the chitta vritti nirodham? At that point, the Surupam will be seen. Tadadrishta Surupa avasthanam. So the yogam technically starts from the Behirangam to the Andaryangam. Right? So starts from the body, then Pranan, mind, intellect, and the bliss sheaths starts from the body plane. And if you see the Ashtanga Yogam, Yamam is all about ethical restraints. Ahimsa, Satyam, Asteyam, Avarigraham, Brahmacharyam. So why do we need? Because we start from the Behirangam and move towards Andarangam. And as per the Yoga Sutram, Yogam is all about Chitta Vritti Nirodham. At that point of time, you will see the self. Tadadrishta Surube Avasthan. Starts with ahimsa. You start respecting yourself. When you say respect yourself, you know the self. And don't do the himsa with others because you understand the same self is in others. So self-respect, respect self and others. This is blindly ahimsa. Satyam. Satyam is all about truthfulness. Understand the truth of life. Asteyam. Asteyam is basically don't steal. Meaning what? Have self-sufficiency in life. Have completeness in life. Have a prosperity attitude and a culture in life. Asteya avarigraham. And don't accumulate unwantedly. You have the sharing, caring kind of a mindset. Brahmacharya. Brahmacharya is what? Stay uninterrupted in the eternal truth. Who truly am I? Am that self. The witness, the Sakshi Chaitanya. So with this knowledge, ahimsa, satya, asteyam, abhirigraham, brahmacharyam, coming to the niyamam, certain personal disciplines we should have. Shaujam, purity. Purity externally as well as internally. Purity at body, mind, intellect, internally as well. In terms of kaya, mano, vak, shuddhi. Shaujam. Santosham. Santosham is all about contentment, having gratitude in life, having joyfulness in life. Tapasa. Tapas is austerity. Austerity is basically the samachittada in this context. Above all dualities, one should be able to live a meaningful life. This is tapasa. Swadhyayam. What is Swadhyayam? Swadhyayam is all about learning about the self. The Nishta. Nishta is what? The Sravana, Manana, Dhyana. This is Swadhyayam. You learn, you teach, you learn from the scriptures. You do the Sravana, Manana, Dhyanam. You have this Nishta. Ishvara Pranidhanam. So Swadhyayam, Ishvara Pranidhanam. Ishvara Pranidhanam is all seeing the same divinity everywhere. So Shamam, Damam, right? Shamam, Damam. Sorry, Shamam, Damam, Yamam, Yama, Niyama, Asana. This is the Ashtanga Yoga path. Yamam, Niyamam, Asana. Asana is basically what? The posture. So that is what the modern people, stop the yogam at, or modern people start the yogam at this asanam and they stop at that place itself. So asanam is one part. This is the posture. What is this posture? For gaining health and mastery over mind. If whether the mind will cooperate or not. Preparation of the mind to do the andaranga yoga, to do the meditation. It has nothing to do with the fancy mats and dresses and yoga dress and all those. Nothing to do with it. So this is asanam, this is the posture. The pranayama, the regulation of the breath. Because we started from the body. Now we see the breath. Breath and mind are connected together. That is where controlling the breath. Regulating the breath. This is pranayama. Then comes the pratyahara. What is pratyahara? Withdrawal of senses. Mastery over mind. Through what? Through indriya nigraham and mano niyantranam. That's what we were discussing before. Then comes the dharana, concentration on the subject. Because the subject cannot be concentrated because this consciousness is the subject here, but this is not an object, first of all. So what is that? Holding the attention to one point. Focusing the attention to the self. This is dharana. And dhyanam. That is dhyanam. Dhyanam is meditation. Continuous flow of attention. Minimal effort. Steady awareness. And last is what? Last limb is samadhi. Samadhi is the culmination. We say where the meditator, the meditation and the object, everything will culminate. That is where the establishing in reality happens. This is samadhi. Deep absorption in consciousness. So that is how the yoga starts from the Behirangam and ultimately it comes to the Antarayaka. That's where Patanjali Maharshi says yoga chitta vritti nirodha tada drishta surube avasthanam. And in the Bhagavad Gita way, Bhagavan Krishna defined yoga in different places. Yoga karmasu kaushalam. The kushalata while we do karmam is yogam. That kushalata will come when one has the complete understanding. One has this kind of understanding. That person will never get affected by the karmam. This is why it's called as karma kushalata. In another place, Bhagavan defined the yoga as samatvam yoga uchyade. The equanimity in life is yogam. And in some other place, Bhagavan says, dukkha samyoga viyogam yoga samjidam. Yogam is basically the disconnection from the sorrows. Kadopnishat defines yogam as tam yogam iti manyate stiram indriya dharanam. Yoga is basically a firm control of senses, mastery over mind, mastery over senses. Yoga is a union. It is not creating any new relationships. It is only discovering the relationship that is already existing. Like an ocean wave, recognizing that it is the same water. So here, Jivan recognize that I am that reality, Tattvamasi. In the 6th chapter, Bhagavan says that anashrita karma bhalam karyam karma karodiya sa sanyasi cha yogi cha na niragnirna chakriya. One who performs actions without dependency on the result is a yogi. In the 6th chapter, Bhagavan says that. Anashrita karma bhalam karyam karma karodiha sa sanyasi cha yogi cha na niragnir na chakriya. So the one who performs actions without dependence on the result is a yogi. So yoga is not just focusing on the body alone. It is not twisting the body in one direction or in difficult shapes. That we can start for the mind to get cooperated. But yoga is basically transforming the mind to making it fit to receive the truth, the reality behind the mind. That is yoga. So yoga can start with the posture, but it has to mature to self-mastery. It should flow to equanimity. It should express itself as excellence in action, and ultimately culminating in the discovery that the individual and Brahman are the same. Aham Brahmasmi. Yoga is an avenue to transform from a distracted person to an integrated person, and ultimately equipping that person to know the true nature. So yogam is basically, we can say, it is a journey to know the true self. Verse number 29. Apane juhvadi pranam prane banam tatapare pranapanagadi ruddha pranayama parayana. Apane juhvadi pranam prane banam tatapare pranapanagadi ruddha pranayama parayana. So some others offer prana into apana and apana into prana. Others regulate the movements of prana and apana through the pranayamam and are devoted to the breath discipline. So prana meaning prana that is going out, the vayu that goes out. Apana is the vayu that goes in. So taking vayu in, holding it. So basically puragam, kumbhagam and rechakam. Going inside, filling, holding, throwing it out. So apana goes in, complete filling, holding, kumbhagam, rejagam, throwing out in the form of prana that goes out. So it is all about, they do the act of respiration as a yajna discipline. When the mind gets upset, we all know that our body develops lot of illness. So these yogis link the respiration process as a yajnam. They link the respiration process as a yajnam. Ultimately what happens? They link the breath with the mind. For what? For controlling the breath and enabling the mind to be conducive enough to gain the knowledge. Clear? Verse number 30. Apare niyadahara pranan praneshu juhvadi sarve pyede yajna vido yajna kshabida kalmasha. Apare niyadahara pranan praneshu juhvadi sarve pyede yajna vido yajna kshabida kalmasha. So others regulate their food and offer the vital energies into one another. And all these people understand yajna. And through yajna, what happens? Basically, the kalmasha. So they destroy the impurities. Niyadahara meaning regulated. Regulated consumption of food, regulated consumption of any intake, whether it is information or emotion or whatever we see, right? Regulation of consumption. This is niyadaharam. So through the regulation, what they do the yajna kshepita kalmasha. So the impurities in the form of selfishness, greed, jealousy, insecurity, ego, they burn this kalmasham through the niyadaharam, through the regulated consumption. Verse number 31. Yajna shishta amruta bhujo yandi brahma sanadanam nayam logostya yajnasya kudonya kuru sattama. Yajna shishta amruta bhujo yandi brahma sanadanam nayam logaha asti ayajnasya kudaha anya kuru sattama. By performing these disciplines, the people who are inquisitive, so called as the mumukshus, gain the eternal Brahman. So what is the nectar of yajnam here? Inner peace, inner maturity, freedom from selfishness, a purified mind which is conducive enough to gain the knowledge. So any relationship requires a sacrifice, that we need to understand. And learning requires a sacrifice. Correct? So for anything, for getting anything in life needs a sacrifice done by somebody. For example, if you have to have a good health, you need to sacrifice certain things. Sacrificing junk food only will enable a good health. Similarly, success in life, we need to sacrifice something. A student who wants to get 100 out of 100 should sacrifice TV watching. Everything meaningful in life requires a sacrifice. And sacrifice, what is the sacrifice here? Sacrificing the ego. So here in our lives, what we have to sacrifice is the ego. Why we need to sacrifice the ego? Because ego has taken the wrong identity in all of us. So sacrifice the ego, then the true self, the Atman, will start shining. So Yajnam is basically removing the clouds of ego. Yajnam in the form of controlling the breath, controlling consumption, controlling the breath, controlling many things. So ultimately for what? Bringing purity in life. And what is the inner nectar? Inner nectar is freedom. Every conscious breath, every disciplined choice, one can bring self-mastery in life. And the reward of Yajnam is basically what? Reward of Yajnam is freedom. Freedom from what? Freedom from the invisible weight of ego, restlessness, and distractions in life. So we perform Yajnam. You perform everything in the form of Yajna. So different ways of doing Yajna. Ultimately all Yajnams will purify the mind, make the mind conducive enough to see the reality behind. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.